In an effort to sort of mix it up a little bit, as opposed to just a talking head sort of speaker for this session, we're actually going to have a panel of folks from Customs and Immigration Service talk about their DevOps lifecycle and the things that they've changed.
I think you should probably give them a few minutes.
Yeah, we may do that one more time. Settling in. You know what it is? I think there was extra sugar at the smoothie bar.
I know, it's the smoothies and the coffee bar. We've got you guys all hyped up.
All right, we're going to get started. Thank you for coming back in. We appreciate it. We wanted to do a quick survey now that we have most of you in here and sitting back down.
All right, guys, raise your hand if you are a developer. Just doing a quick survey. Yay! All right, me too. Raise your hand if you're an ops guy or gal.
Really?
Really?
Raise your hand.
That can't be right. That can't be right. I saw a bunch of ops people from
Seems like
a couple of customers. Yeah.
Raise your hand.
Everyone's scared. The ops guys are like afraid to raise their hand because this is
That might be it. That might be
it.
it. Raise your hand if you're just here for the free breakfast.
Or a smoothie. Yeah.
Or the smoothie. Yeah, that's right. Cool. So as I mentioned, we're going to have a panel of folks from Citizenship and Immigration Services out of DHS. Did I get that right, guys? That is, yeah? Okay, good. Talking about their experience implementing a DevOps lifecycle in the government arena. A lot of times when we start to hear all of these ideas from industry, we start to think, I don't know, you don't understand my problems, you don't understand what I've got to do, I can't possibly do this inside the government. So we wanted to get some folks up here who have done this within the government to talk about the life cycle, talk about the lifestyle, and a lot of the tooling that they've used in order to get it done. So with that, I'll introduce my good friend Tariq, or Tarek. I never know which one.
Good friend, and he doesn't even know his name.
So to be fair, his mother calls him Tariq, right? And his father calls him Tarek. So I'm not actually doing anything wrong there. But here he is, and he's going to run our panel, and we're going to have a good time. So thank you.
Yeah, he's following me up. Morning, everyone. Please welcome on stage. My name is Tariq, or Tariq Islam, pick your poison. I'm a solution specialist with Red Hat, and I've had the pleasure of being joined here with Steve Grunch, Adrian Monza, and Rob Brown. I'll let them introduce themselves from USCIS.
Hi, good morning. I'm Steve Grunch. I'm the manager of our cloud service platform in AWS. I've been with USCIS for about 2.5 years.
I'm Adrian Monza. I'm the branch chief for cyber defense at USCIS. So I own all of our security tools, security engineering, penetration testing, vulnerability management. So I get involved in a lot of the technical bits.
Rob Brown. I work within the SDD division, branch chief of Enterprise Business Services.
If you don't mind taking a seat. So in case you didn't catch all that, we've basically got the head of development, security, and operations right here. And the journey that we're going to try to illustrate through a series of questions is to showcase basically how these thought leaders in their organization were able to shoulder the organization really across this span of going from, the traditional way of doing things, a lot of things that we're probably very much used to doing them today and in the past and historically, all the way through to achieving a culture of DevSecOps or DevOpsSec or however you want to permutate that term. But establishing that culture, it's not just an end state, it's more of a journey to another journey, right? Now I know, guys, we spent a lot of time in the war room in a like a 10 by 8 room, very warm. But so we got to know each other very well. But there were some questions that I had that, again, hopefully we can shed some light on how you guys were able to accomplish what you're able to accomplish in the government space. Now the way they did this was through the adoption of containers and an enterprise container platform, along with a number of other tools. And we worked closely with them, and it was a great joy to do so. But one of the first things that I wanted to ask each of you, and just kind of going down the line, was, what were some of the compelling factors that caused you to start looking at containers in the first place?
Sure. So from an operations perspective, a lot of our applications were having high failure rates. We were spending a lot of time on incident management rather than development. And we wanted to start looking at ways that we could basically decompose the application, make services, more service-centric instead of basically putting out fires all the time and doing a lot of incident response because certain components of applications were down or dependencies of applications were offline.
Security?
So from a security perspective, after I got over the initial terror of yet another thing being added to the environment that I needed to secure, what really appealed to me about containers was the consistency. And there's fewer things now in my environment that I need to secure. I have one platform that we can deploy the containers on. Containers themselves, we're turning off SSH so people aren't going into them. They're not making uncontrolled changes. And from a security standpoint, I can work with these gentlemen to curate what images we make available for developers so we can give them things that are where most of the security work has already been done for them. And for us, from a security side, it just makes our lives just that much easier with fewer things that we have to worry about. It really gets us a lot closer to security being truly a default.
Right.
From our perspective, it was fast, lightweight, and more importantly, it actually empowered developers to actually have some level of control from a DevSecOps perspective, something that they could actually spin up very quickly on their laptop, even within some sort of CSP environment with relative ease. And to both of these gentlemen's points, really configuration management. It helps abate a lot of the challenges that exist from an ops and security perspective. Essentially is abated and is something that we could put into an SCM system for all to view.
From a security perspective, just leveraging on what you've said, it became one pipeline now that I can integrate with. And in security, we're always trying to move to the left. Every security person I've ever talked to, I have this common complaint. We're the last persons to know, or the last people that get consulted on everything. Even absent the platform piece, just with the containers now, I'm able to integrate my containers with a singular pipeline. I can break builds if certain security and compliance rules aren't followed, if there are known vulnerabilities. That's huge for me. That means that I can actually take a lot of the heavyweight compliance processes off because I'm already integrated into them. By the time that something goes to production or is ready to go to production, the security checks have already been done.
And so, and to add to that, so once, because security is actually integrated at the beginning with the development phases, once we do bring the application into production, we have a higher level of confidence that we do meet the security requirements, that we can maintain our ATO or authority to operate for that application, and then we have a higher confidence in its ability to be available for our customers.
So what were some of the cultural challenges, I guess? Because we're hearing, each of your own perspectives and what you guys each care about with your respective organizations within CIS. What were some of those challenges that, the three of you and your teams had to overcome, from a process and people perspective to get to where you are today with the DevOps culture?
First would be just understanding. That was number one. Mm-hmm. So taking advantage of certain groups and teams that had stood up sort of centers of excellence, mm-hmm. help provide a level of education for adoption, and having sort of almost a guerrilla marketing effort on training that the first presentation this morning had some practical steps. Those are some of the steps we actually leveraged. Having a monthly sort of agile learning forum where we actually talk about these activities, we talk about what this technology is, and bringing vendors from outside to actually have those discussions, as well as internal and sharing those experiences as to what was happening at USCIS. Lunch and Learns was another big one. Sitting down and doing workshops, developing training sessions that were hands-on, I think was one of the biggest advantages in this adoption and moving forward from a cultural perspective, so that everybody was reading from the same sheet of music.
Okay, so yeah, to add to that, I would say that one of the key factors for us was that we actually had senior leadership support in putting this project together and building out the container platform. One of the things that we ran into, though, as we started to build out this platform and operationalize it, is that very quickly we realized that we needed help from other parts of the organization, not just development, not just operations or security, but we needed, because USCIS has such a diverse, group and the way that the organization is structured, we had to reach out to multiple teams other than what's being represented here, and getting those folks on board and getting them onboarded quickly, so that they understood the importance of the project and getting them to the point where they were able to help us. It took a little bit of conversation and some, calling in favors, if you will, and education and marketing, like Rob said, to kind of get that ball rolling. But at the end of the day, the organization did come through. We got tremendous amounts of support from contracting, from acquisition, from our network operations team, and other groups within the agency that were able to make it a success.
So from our standpoint in security, I think really the key was what Rob said, was really understanding things and starting to understand them from a development perspective. Most of the people on my team are not developers. We typically come out of more of an ops engineering focused, so we kind of understand that area, and we don't really understand kind of what is sometimes involved in bringing, doing the development and then bring the nuts and bolts of bringing an application to production. I think one of the key differences is we started writing code for different tools for ourselves, and so we started adopting the tools that Rob and the development teams had already adopted. And so by doing that, it helped us understand where they were coming from, how things worked, and so it really stopped us from doing some of the things I've seen previously where we would say, well, you need to do this, and then someone would say, well, it doesn't work that way. We had a much better understanding of how it exactly does work, so we're able to integrate better with them. I think that was really a key, and I think just the relationships, right? Culturally, there's been a real focus on moving across the developing those relationships at the management and lower levels across the organization to kind of facilitate these types of things occurring. We're trying really, really hard to break down those organizational silos of there's a development organization, there's an operations organization, there's a security organization, and nary the twain shall meet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to your point, like part of some of the practices as we move through was, again, and you've already mentioned it, getting different teams to, when we started this, the three of us into the same room, and getting the painter tape out and putting up our Kanban board on the wall.
Yeah, I remember that.
And having a serious session of just trying to understand what we're trying to accomplish and prioritizing in dev and ops and security user stories, and then tackling them and making sure everybody had a voice. And this wasn't by, I wouldn't say committee, this was maybe a 7-person team, and it was a mixture of federal employees and different contractors, all having the same, understanding what that goal and mission was, and participating from that onset of what those user stories were, and then tasking and moving forward. That was also a huge help.
Yeah, I remember walking into the war room and just seeing all of you in the room. I was like, everyone's here. What is going on? But seeing the instantiation of DevSecOps in reality, right? Seeing it happen before my eyes, especially coming from an industry perspective. We walked through the architecture of OpenShift and AWS and CloudFormation template, the whole thing, right? But seeing it from each of your perspectives in real time as we're trying to build this thing out, it was really incredible to see. So, now that you guys are kind of well on your way into the adoption of a container platform, right? Container-based deployment methodology. What are some of the biggest, I guess, advantages that come to mind with respect to this?
So from an operations perspective, number one, we get a common platform and we get a means of consistent deployment. Each application that onboards has a similar CI/CD pipeline. They're using similar components, so we don't have to support as many products. The onboarding process has been streamlined and is working fairly well. And so now we're kind of moving into more of a marketing and advertising phase where we're reaching out to key stakeholders that have critical applications that we want to onboard so that we can continue the adoption rate in the organization.
So from a security standpoint, what he said, because all of those things apply to security. When you have consistent configurations, if I ever need to make a configuration change from a security perspective, it's much, much easier to now go apply that enterprise-wide. The level of automation that has been brought to task is absolutely huge. We are let's face it, we're a brownfield organization. We have newer platforms like our OpenShift platform and containers where, again, there's no SSH in production, no one's going into the containers, no one's making manual changes. From a security standpoint, I mean, that really limits the attack surface. In some of our legacy environments, it's not like that. We have people that are going in when they're doing deploys and manually doing a bunch of things to make them work. Those types of changes have not just big operational benefits, the security benefits from them are absolutely just unbelievable from my perspective.
Yeah, from my perspective, we're looking at, again, we're empowering the developers and ideally empowering them straight to production. So if something does break in production, if it's not automated, they still have that capability to have a level of ownership, which is huge. And it does help change the culture of from idea to what you're delivering to that customer. And I think it also puts them more in tune with those end users. To me, that's huge. So they can truly benefit from what they're really trying to accomplish and develop.
I have to admit, straight to production still makes me nervous. All right.
We're getting there.
It's just a 12-step program. I'm only on 5, okay? Haven't
You're
gotten
on
there
3.
yet.
You're on 3. Man. There's a lot of arm wrestling with this.
Yeah, no, but that's part of it, right? That's part of the culture, right? That's part
Totally.
of DevOpsSec. It's not just a kumbaya session day in and day out. It's sometimes you guys clash heads, sometimes you arm wrestle, sometimes one wins and the other loses, but at least you're all on the stage together getting along, right?
Still working on it
So
for a second.
in terms of, I guess, the next question is more of a, what's next in terms of what you guys want to accomplish, right? You've achieved a lot, right? Especially for an organization in the government space, getting through, the traditional bureaucracies, the processes, things of that nature. What's next? Now that you've got this platform, now that you've got these automations in place, now that you've got a DevOpsSec culture established, right? And you're building that out and you're extending that out. What's next? What's the vision here at this point for each of you?
So I think a lot of it is about scale, right? So we have, like any other government organization, we have a lot of different apps on a lot of different platforms. We've got Linux applications, Windows applications. We've got mainframe. A lot of it is taking what we've learned, taking the platforms that we've built, and starting to, examine what applications make sense to migrate onto our container platforms, and then also determining whether some of those applications should go to infrastructure as a service platforms. So that's kind of where we are. There is we have quite a bit of migration in place already, and so we're looking at streamlining that, and then obviously making the transition to the cloud or to a platform as a service more as a commodity type action instead of customized for each one. So that's kind of where we're going, what we're looking at.
So I'll talk more specifically about where we are with our OpenShift and implementation, and kind of where I see that piece going, because I think it has a little bit more, I can talk better to that rather than more abstract, where are we going in security for USCIS. So we've migrated a significant number of microservices to it, but where I see this going and where the security benefit is starting to move kind of those more legacy applications, the stateful Linux applications, re-platforming some things so that we really have this consistent platform that is our target for all of our applications. I'm really excited about things like source to image. The idea of all the developer gets to bring is code, and I work with Steve and we bring everything else and all the settings, and they don't get to muck with them. It just fills me with glee. Oh, it doesn't work with the hardening settings? Darn. Better rewrite the code. But I mean, it really, that level of systemization really just makes things easier for the developer. It's a bunch of standardized Lego bricks, and as long as they play within the rules, they can build these great things. And from a security standpoint, all of the different pieces that they've used to build them are all secure. We've built in the security to all of the primitives that they're going to use. So that for me is just incredibly exciting. Functions as a service, that's going even further down that road. But I can really see for a lot of the stuff that we want to do, particularly with microservices that are asynchronous, there's no reason to even waste a container on them. Run them as a function that just, a queue pops up and says, hey, I've got something for you. Function takes it, goes, does some work, and comes back. Also, from a security perspective, we're really working hard. We need to have much better tooling and support for the pipelines. We have integrated into the development pipelines, but it's still very much a work in progress, and we need to get that tooling better. I've alluded to, we can break builds. What I wanted to do is really automate that process so that on a regular basis, the developers are getting much better feedback about the security issues that are in the containers that they're using, the security issues that are in the code that they're working on pushing. If we can get there, I think that'll be helpful to the operations staff and also to the developers. Again, it's about empowering them. If I can move left that far, then there's no more of these manual processes where someone has to bring code to us, and we do manual code reviews, and we're looking at all of the different settings, and that takes 2 weeks. That's an entire sprint that they're not releasing code. I want to get that into a couple of minute compilation cycle. We're working on it.
I mean, from both of these gentlemen, ideally what the manifestation of this truly is a factory, is what I see, and really the vision moving forward, where developers they don't need to worry about any Ansible scripts or Chef scripts or ideally, potentially even YAML files for that matter. Really, they can operate within their SCM and commit and do pull requests and get feedback from their CI/CD pipelines to either within their own OCP environment that sits locally, or within something on a CSP that environment is created when they do that pull request. So again, creating that factory to abstract away a lot of these other moving manual parts is sort of where I would like to see this going, as well as all of our bosses would like to see this going. So there again, there is reproducibility, there's traceability. At any point in time, we can see where that code lives.
Great. So I guess one more question. In terms of just general like advice, lessons learned that you have for folks out here in the audience, in terms of where they might be able to start, some best practices, things of that nature. Anything that you guys can share there?
So I think like we had mentioned earlier, moving to a container platform of any kind, or implementing these CI/CD pipelines or DevSecOps type methodologies inside of your organization is an organization-wide activity. It's not just a couple people in the organization having an idea to do it. You have to have the support of all of your departments, whether that's HR, legal, your contracting office, and then all of your engineering, security, and development groups. Just as an example, if you want to build a platform and you have to hire human resources to do it, if you've got to wait 30 to 45 days to EOD somebody, you're not moving at a very high speed, right? So those are examples of what we of what we've encountered. And so I would say if you're going to implement this type of program within your organization, consider onboarding all of your departments. It's just going to make it flow much better. It's going to give you a much more collaborative environment to work with, and allow these decisions to be made much quicker.
So I wrote down a whole bunch of things. So I guess in terms of my best practices, one of them is throw away the GUIs. Everything needs to be code. And my rationale for that is in security, consistency is so important. I was watching a talk a while ago from it's out on YouTube. It's from the NSA's director of targeted operations, basically their red team. And one of the things that he talked about is that they find those inconsistencies, and that's how they get in. And from a security perspective, when you have those inconsistencies, understanding why something's like this in the logs and why it's different than the other ones, it makes it very easy for things that shouldn't be happening to get lost in that noise. So when you have everything expressed as code, it's all consistent, it's all in a single place, it does make it much easier to deal with those types of problems.
And transparent to the organization.
And yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, I forgot about that. When I have my firewall rules as code in a Git repo that we're using Jenkins to build and push down to a firewall, think about what that does from an auditability standpoint. I don't have to log in or have somebody buy separate software to see what the rules actually are. I just go into the repository, or no, I actually just clone it and bring it up in my code editor. But it makes that type of thing makes things so much easier. It reduces that friction where I don't have to go ask somebody. I just get the answer. I will also say that this whole cultural transformation, it does take time. And as somebody who's involved in, I think, in leading it, right? Really look at Rob here, and then Steve as the real leaders of it. I kind of tag behind. But they're really leading from the front and setting the expectations amongst their staff and amongst their contractors about what the level of expertise that they're expecting and what their expectations are. They're expecting a level of understanding about security, and so that even if I'm not in the room, my requirements are being taken into account, not just by them, but by all of their folks, and vice versa, right? Each of us has to have a better understanding of what the other is doing and what the other needs are. And that gets to my last point, which is education is absolutely crucial throughout this. Education on the tooling, education on the platform, education on what are the requirements. Each of us is currently involved in writing a how-to guide for the organization. How we do development, right? What are the couple of ways which we think are our best practices? From a security standpoint, what is it that I need you to do? How do you go about doing that? What are our best practices? What are the tips and tricks that we have to make things go smoothly? How to do the engineering, right? How should you be architected for the things that aren't deployed on OCP? Well, nothing.
So just to add to that, the organization should have some kind of formal training process or should at least have classes. I think Rob mentioned this also, because when we were putting this platform together, we got questions from all over the organization, and it ranged from what is a container and what does it do?
What's a Docker?
What's a Docker?
What's a Docker?
And what's Docker? What's this? What's that? Right? And then as you move up the stack and you move into different audiences, the questions became more complex, more technical. Mm-hmm. How do I do blue-green deployments? How do I roll things back? How do I manage the namespace that I get in OCP, and how do I set up proxies on inodes and things like that? So as we moved up into the different groups, we had different levels of technical questions, different specifications from a management perspective and things like that. And so having the documentation built as we went along was helpful also. That way, we had a common repo that has all kinds of documentation in it about, kind of the project history, but then also it's spelled out different components of this is how operations is going to work in this environment, this is how security is going to work, and these are the different responsibilities of the developers and how they need to hook the application into the monitoring and security tools that we have.
And because we produce the documentation and store it in our source code repository, it's right out there, so anyone can contribute. So I've gotten contributions from developers in terms of here's the how-to for some specific security item, and I know that I go into Rob's repository upon occasion to find out how I'm supposed to be doing development of my own security tools.
Yeah, to your point, I think in sort of trying to talk about all of this, I think one of the first things, we were lucky that we had really good leadership, that were champions of all of these efforts. That made a big difference. That manifested itself in helping to set the vision, and setting the vision, as well as from something that was really tangible, was providing, at least in our agency, management instructions. And currently there are 3 management instructions. The first one really is thou shalt or please do agile development. So that was the first one. The second one was what was called team managed deployments, and that was this please do at least continuous integration. And then the most recent one, management instruction 3, was a bit of a twist from the other ones. It essentially deprecated both 1 and 2, and it was how to do DevSecOps really, and with a focus on CI/CD. And it was the structure was objective based, not thou shalt. So it set 10 objectives to help guide teams and give them some carrots, like if you meet all of these objectives, you guys can now deploy on your own, which again, back to empowerment of those teams is huge. But it also provides a level of governance that's required to not just going to let anybody go and deploy on their own into production.
Right.
So having some of that framework in place, and then on the sort of the tools perspective, getting all teams across essentially the entire, well, really across the entire agency, in a few, well, I guess it was a half a year or maybe a little bit longer, to actually migrate and start using a common SCM tool and not promoting anything, but we were using GitHub Enterprise. That helped promote, again, complete transparency across all teams, still working on reusability, but trying to and help promote sort of an inner sourcing mindset. So that helped with culture, with tooling. And then moving forward from that, once folks got an understanding of that tool and all of its other feature sets, like how we can leverage it for documentation, a good example, documentation, let's use Markdown, right? We can actually, from one repo, we can actually stand up a static website that provides anything you could want and help educate anybody who has access. Huge. I mean, made a big difference. To, again, providing common platforms that sort of eliminated a lot of rogue behavior in a GSS format. So again, multi-tenant CI/CD pipelines that were templatized for folks against a lot of the different SCM tools, well, one SCM tool, as well as automated testing tools, from JMeter to doing static code analysis with Fortify, SonarQube, those sorts of things. Again, we were coming from a place that was very rogue and trying to help limit this rogue behavior and promote good practice and governance.
Snowflakes.
Yeah, snowflakes,
They're
sure,
not rogue,
snowflakes.
They're snowflakes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of snowflakes. We had a blizzard.
And then with the adoption of OCP, I mean, we're now at a stage where we sort of changed, I think, some of this whole DevSecOps and trying to promote that as really one group that is service-based, service-oriented, and even changing the names. Like we are starting to leverage customer success engineer names. And instead of a scrum master that's a PM, this gentleman and ladies, their skill set is technical with a project management background where they can actually help onboard teams and provide checklists. This is how you get onto the CI/CD pipeline. Here's how you use the template. Here's how you actually leverage OCP in your CI portion and CD portion. So changing that mindset and having those engineers front-facing and providing a service, I think, is sort of a good approach. We've seen success so far.
Great, great. We have a few seconds left, so I'll ask one more question, just a little bit unscripted. Tabs or spaces?
Spaces.
Spaces.
Tabs. How would you even think spaces really?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus 1.
All right.
Yeah, see? Yeah.
So 2 tabs and 2 spaces up here. I guess it's a dead heat. All right, thank you very much, everyone. And thank you to the 3 of you guys for taking the time to come out and sharing your experiences with us.